I was lying in the hospital bed, barely able to move, when my mom's voice crackled through the phone. "I know this is hard, sweetheart, but we already promised your brother would be there for his big award ceremony. You understand, right?" I didn't understand. Not at all. I had just survived a car accident that could have killed me. My car was totaled, my ribs were bruised, and my leg was in a cast. But instead of flying out to see me, my parents were going to clap for my brother as he accepted some finance industry award. That was the moment I realized exactly where I stood in my family. Growing up, my younger brother, Jason, was the golden child. He was smart, charismatic, and had a natural talent for making money. My parents practically worshipped him. Meanwhile, I was just there. I wasn't a failure by any means. I had a decent job, a small apartment, and savings I was proud of. But to them, I was never exceptional. When I got into the accident, I called my mom as soon as I could. I was shaken, still processing the fact that I was lucky to be alive. I thought she'd be on the next flight. Instead, she hesitated before saying, "Oh, sweetheart, that's awful, but Jason's award ceremony is this weekend. We've been looking forward to this for months. Maybe we can visit next month." I couldn't believe it. Jason's award. That was more important than my life nearly ending. I spent a week in the hospital, mostly alone. A couple of close friends stopped by, but my family. Nowhere to be seen. Jason sent a text that read, "That sucks, man. Get better soon." That was it. The resentment started brewing then, but I told myself to let it go. It was just one moment. Just one bad decision. But looking back, I should have known this was only the beginning. Fast forward a year, and my leg had healed, but my view of my family never quite recovered. I kept my distance. Calls were brief. Visits were rare. But then, out of nowhere, my mom called, her voice trembling. "Jason's in trouble," she said. I sighed. Of course he was. Jason had been living large, fancy cars, expensive suits, high-end apartments. He made a name for himself in finance, always bragging about how he could outsmart the system. But apparently, he had taken things too far. He was being investigated for fraud. Big fraud. Millions of dollars gone, investors furious, and the authorities closing in. My parents were panicking. His accounts were frozen, his assets seized, and he needed bail money. That's when my mom dropped the bombshell. "Sweetheart, we were thinking you have those savings, right? Maybe you could help Jason out." I almost laughed. The same parents who couldn't bother to visit me in the hospital after my accident were now calling me, begging me to drain my hard-earned savings to bail out the golden child. I took a deep breath. And then I said one word. "No." There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the call. "What do you mean, no?" my mom finally asked, her voice tight. "I mean exactly that," I said. "I'm not giving Jason my savings. It's not my problem." My dad, who had been silent until now, suddenly chimed in. "Listen, we know things haven't been perfect between you and Jason. But this is serious. If we don't get him out, he could end up in prison." "Maybe he should," I shot back. Another silence. This one heavier. "Don't say that," my mom whispered, as if I'd spoken some unspeakable curse. "He's your brother." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah? And where was my brother when I was in the hospital? Where were you?" Neither of them had an answer. That conversation was just the beginning. Over the next week, my parents called me non-stop, each time with a different approach. First, it was guilt. "You don't understand how hard this is for us. We are doing everything we can, but we just need a little help. It's family, sweetheart. Family helps each other." Then, it was anger. "You're being selfish. You're letting your brother suffer just because of some grudge." Then, it was desperation. "Please. Just a loan. Just enough for the bail. We'll pay you back." I stood firm. Every single time, I said no. But then Jason called. It was the first time I'd heard his voice in months. And predictably, he started off like nothing had happened. "Hey, man. Long time no talk, huh? He said with a nervous chuckle. Yeah. Long time, I said, my voice flat. What do you want? Look, I know Mom and Dad have been on your case, but I wanted to reach out myself. Just brother to brother. I stayed silent, waiting. I messed up, okay. I took some bad advice, got in too deep. But I can fix this. I just need some help getting back on my feet. Help? I repeated. Yeah. I know you've got savings. I swear, once I clear my name, I'll pay you back double. No, triple. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. You don't get it, do you? I don't trust you. I don't owe you anything. And I'm not giving you a cent. His tone changed in an instant. Wow. So that's it. You're just gonna let your own brother rot? I guess so. For the first time in his life, Jason had nothing to say. I thought that was the end of it. That they'd finally get the message. But I underestimated just how far my parents were willing to go. A few days later, I got a notification from my bank. An attempted withdrawal. From my account. For Jason's bail amount. I felt my stomach drop. There was only one explanation. My parents had tried to access my savings. My hands were shaking as I opened my banking app. The withdrawal attempt had failed, thank God. But what sent a chill down my spine was the fact that someone had even tried. And I knew exactly who it was. My parents. I immediately called my bank. After a long wait, a security representative confirmed what I suspected: someone had used old banking details, ones I had shared with my mum years ago, to try and pull money from my savings. Luckily, the transfer was flagged as suspicious, the rep said. We blocked it. But I'd recommend updating your passwords and security settings. I thanked them, but my heart was pounding. My own parents had tried to steal from me. I dialed my mum's number, my hands still shaking with rage. She picked up after one ring, her voice sugar-sweet. Sweetheart. I was just about to call you. Cut the crap, I snapped. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you trying to steal from me? Dead silence. Then, a hesitant, we weren't stealing, honey. We were just borrowing. Without asking me. Well, we knew you'd say no, she blurted, as if that justified it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Do you even hear yourself? I said, my voice cold. You're trying to rob your own son to save the one who committed actual fraud. Do you even care about me at all? Of course we do, my dad cut in, his voice defensive. But Jason needs help right now. We are just trying to keep this family together. I let out a bitter laugh. Family? You mean the one you ignored when I was lying in a hospital bed? Or the one you just tried to rob? No answer. Just uncomfortable silence. I hope you realize this means we are done, I continued. I've already changed all my security settings. If you try this again, I'll report you for fraud, just like Jason. Don't be dramatic, my mom huffed. Oh, now I'm dramatic. I scoffed. Fine. Watch me be dramatic and cut you both off for good. Don't call me, don't text me, and definitely don't ever ask me for money again. I'm done. And with that, I hung up. For the next few days, my phone blew up. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts ranging from desperate to outright nasty. My parents begged me to reconsider. Jason sent a half-hearted "sorry for the misunderstanding, bro. Can we talk" message. I ignored them all. Then, the messages took a darker turn. You're abandoning your family. You'll regret this one day. Don't be surprised if we stop considering you our son. That last one stung more than I expected. But I reminded myself, these weren't the words of loving parents. They were the words of people who had made their choice a long time ago. And now? I was making mine. But the story doesn't end there. Because a few weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer. And what they told me turned my whole world upside down. I sat in my apartment, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. They forged my damn signature. I should have been furious. I should have been punching walls. But all I felt was this deep, sickening exhaustion. How had it come to this? I replayed my conversation with the lawyer in my head. Your parents listed you as a guarantor for Jason's debts, he had said. That's impossible, I had replied, already feeling my stomach drop. I wish it were. But from what I can see, they submitted paperwork stating that if Jason was unable to pay his debts, the financial responsibility would fall to you. And I hate to tell you this, but they forged your signature. I had felt the ground tilt beneath me. Is this even legal? I had asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Not in the slightest. It's fraud. And you have every right to take legal action against them. Fraud. That word. The one thing I had spent months warning them about. The one thing Jason had already done on a massive scale. And now, my own parents had done the exact same thing to me. I had given them every opportunity to walk away from this disaster. Every warning, every chance to stop. And instead, they tried to bury me along with Jason. The next morning, I met with the lawyer in person. We gathered every piece of documentation we could, financial records, proof of my real signature, past statements to compare handwriting. Then we did two things. We formally contested the fraudulent agreement and filed to have my name removed from Jason's debts. We filed a fraud report against my parents. That second one. It wasn't an easy choice. I sat in my lawyer's office, staring at the paperwork. My name signed at the bottom. Official. Permanent. A document that could send my own mother and father to court, possibly to prison. But then I remembered the hospital bed. Lying there alone, waiting for them to care. And I remembered the bank notification. The moment I realized they had tried to steal from me. And finally, I remembered the forged documents. How easily they had thrown me under the bus just to save Jason. They made their choice. I made mine. I signed the papers. The fallout was immediate. The very next day, my phone exploded with missed calls. First, from my mom. Then, my dad. And finally, Jason. I ignored all of them. But then the text started. Mom, we need to talk. Right now. Dad, son, please don't do this. We can fix this. Jason, WTF did you do? Then came the voicemails. My mom was crying, telling me I was being irrational, that I was tearing this family apart. My dad was furious, ranting about how I was being spiteful over a misunderstanding. And Jason? He just laughed. Wow. So you really went through with it, huh? You think you've won? You think they'll choose you over me? Hilarious. You're still nothing. You always have been. I deleted the message. And then, for the first time in my life, I blocked my entire family. But the story wasn't over. Because just when I thought I had finally cut them off for good, I got a visit from the police. And what they told me made my blood run cold. When I opened my front door and saw two uniformed police officers standing there, my stomach dropped. Are you my name? One of them asked. Yeah, I said cautiously. What's this about? The officer gave me a tight-lipped look and handed me a document. A restraining order. Filed against me. By my parents. I let out a breathless laugh. You've got to be kidding me. The officer remained stone-faced. Sir, this order states that you have allegedly been harassing your parents and making threats against them. My blood boiled. They are the ones who tried to steal from me. They forged my signature. They committed fraud. And now they are trying to make me look like the bad guy. We are just delivering the notice, the second officer said, clearly not wanting to get involved in family drama. You have the right to contest this in court. Of course. Court. That was exactly what my parents wanted. They knew they were being investigated for fraud, so they had tried to flip the narrative to make it seem like I was the one harassing them. It was a desperate move. A pathetic one. But I wasn't going to let them win. I'll contest it, I said firmly. That's your right, the officer replied before they both left. I closed the door, my hands shaking with rage. This was it. This was the final straw. The next day, I contacted my lawyer. They are trying to turn this around on me, I told him. What do we do? We fight it, he said without hesitation. We gathered everything. Phone records proving they were the ones who had harassed me with dozens of calls. Bank statements showing their attempted theft. Legal documents proving they had forged my signature. Emails and text messages where they had begged me for money, then insulted me when I refused. And then we counterfiled. I contested the restraining order. I escalated the fraud case. And I filed a civil lawsuit against my parents for damages. If they wanted a war, I was giving them one. 2 months later, I found myself sitting in a courtroom across from my parents. My mother, who always prided herself on looking classy and put together, looked disheveled. Her eyes were red, her hands twisting in her lap. My father looked even worse. The stress of everything had aged him seemingly overnight. Jason. Nowhere to be found. He was already in jail, awaiting trial for his fraud charges. My lawyer presented everything. Every document, every text, every record proving that my parents had lied about me. Their lawyer tried to argue that they were just concerned parents who feared for their safety. Then we played my mother's voicemail. The one where she told me I would regret this if I didn't help Jason. The judge took one look at the evidence and threw out the restraining order. But it didn't stop there. The fraud case against my parents. It stuck. The bank confirmed that they had attempted unauthorized access to my accounts. The financial documents they had submitted with my forged signature were undeniable. They were officially charged with fraud. Their punishment wasn't as severe as Jason's, but it was public. My mother and father, once so obsessed with their family's reputation, were now branded as criminals. I wish I could say I felt happy. That I walked out of the courtroom feeling victorious. But all I felt was empty. These were the people who had raised me. The people who were supposed to protect me. And instead, they had done everything in their power to ruin me just to protect Jason. And where was Jason now? Gone. He was serving a 7-year sentence for fraud, and from what I heard, he had already lost everything. His fancy cars. Seized. His bank accounts. Frozen. His friends. Vanished. The golden child had finally fallen. As for my parents, they tried one last time to reach out. A pathetic, half-hearted apology email. We never meant for things to get this bad. We just wanted to keep the family together. We miss you. Please, let's talk. I stared at it for a long time. Then, I deleted it. And that was the last time I ever heard from them. A year later, I packed up my apartment and moved across the country. New city. New job. New life. I built something for myself. No golden children. No forgotten sons. Just me. And you know what? I've never been happier. Because some people say that family is forever. But I say that family is earned. And sometimes, walking away is the best thing you can ever do.